Hey everyone, welcome to PunkCast. My name is William Maxwell. I'm a student of Web3 and the owner of Punk9527. Cryptopunks are 10,000 uniquely generated characters stored permanently on the Ethereum blockchain. No punk is the same. This is a show dedicated to celebrating the punks behind the punk. My hope for this podcast is that we capture the essence of the punk culture, elevate the brand and the individual behind the punk. One last thing. Projects discussed on the show is not financial advice. Crypto and NFTs are a volatile and risky asset class. Please always do your own research. Other than that, let's go. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of PunkCast. Today we've got Punk8423. He's a 3 Atty with normal black beard, earring, and super dope orange knitted cap. He's a serial entrepreneur, having been recognized as Forbes 30 Under 30 and Billboard 40 Under 40. He's a founder of Third Brain, an independent record label, and Metalink, an NFT social platform. Please welcome the one and only Jake Udell to the show. Jake, how are you, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Maxwell. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, man. I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while, man. Been seeing a lot of the stuff that you've been working on and really intrigued about how that's all progressing. But maybe we can sort of start with a simple question around your background, upbringing, what sort of led you into the space? Because I think you've got a really interesting background. I did a bit of digging up on Wikipedia, but it seems like you're a pretty big name out there at the moment.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And thank you, by the way. I know you were one of the first people to sign into Metalink all the way back when we were like a little tiny private chat app for Cryptopunks. So it's fun to connect with the OG right now. But I started my first business when I was 13 years old. And by the time I was 19, I realized that I wanted to do something where I could have a voice. And the only thing worse than telling my parents that I was going to be a rapper, because I was a rapper for a time period, was that I was going to manage female DJs for a living. Because at the time there was like no successful female DJs in the world really that were generating enough income where their manager could have a job, and a real salary. And so that was sort of the beginning of, I guess, my career more in music. Was I started managing this group called Corella, and they had like negative $24 in their bank account. They were washing their hair with laundry detergent because they couldn't afford shampoo, but they were amazing. They were just amazing. And I believed in them. I thought that they could do to dance music what the Black Eyed Peas did to hip hop. We had a really great run, and we did some crazy things on the internet. I was always kind of like a good marketer on the internet. And so we did some really cool things on the internet, and that allowed them to succeed. We had a couple top 40 records, and then I was just off to the races ever since.
Nice. And so, you were 13. Was that your first, dip into music? Like, how did you...
No. So what I was doing was I was chasing athletes and celebrities outside their hotels, getting their autographs and selling them on eBay. And, a lot of the people that do that, that's like how they need the money, right? Like they're grown adults. And for me, I just thought it was cool. And I liked the idea of making money doing it. And then I didn't even know what to do with the money, right? Like I didn't need the money to live. My parents provided for me, so I didn't need that. So I didn't know what to do with the money. And I just started calling up like Magic Johnson's agent on the phone and asking if he could sign a bunch of stuff for me, and then, selling it at charity auctions, eBay, et cetera. So I was just hyper entrepreneurial from a really young age. I think I didn't fit in, so for me, I needed some sort of way to express myself, improve myself. And I found that in business. I found that if I could achieve in business at a young age, it would kind of put me ahead of the pack in some ways. And I wanted that. I wanted to achieve so bad. I was voted most ambitious in my high school class because I was working all the time. It's just inside of me to just do that. So, yeah.
Man, it sounds like you were grinding for whitelist before whitelist was a thing.
Yeah, right. The thing is, it's very similar, right? You're like waiting outside the hotel for 12 hours for LeBron James or Dwayne Wade. It's very similar to being in those Discord chats, just grinding away, trying to get that spot. I was just trying to get that signature. So definitely been there.
Why music of all the things that you could have chosen to move into? Like, what was it about music?
Great question. So I think I realized that when the recession hit back in 2008, it was the first time I realized, oh my God, all this inventory I have, signed jerseys, et cetera, people don't need them the way that they need milk or toilet paper and stuff like that. And so I started to think, if I was going to do something next and I was making a good living, more than my teachers being a little paparazzi, then I wanted to make sure that whatever I did next, I could have a voice. Because where I grew up, there were some wealthy families, and those wealthy families, their parents were like doctors or lawyers, but they couldn't, they had no influence. And, Twitter and Facebook were just kind of getting really popular. And I thought about how valuable influence was going to be. I wish I would have taken it even more seriously, but I knew it was going to be something very serious. And so I knew whatever I wanted to do next, I wanted to have influence. I wanted to be able to make a difference in the world. I wanted to be able to, whatever it is I wanted to do, if Lil Wayne wanted to go and take people to Africa on some expedition, like people would go with him, they'd follow, whereas people weren't going to follow the doctor or the lawyer. And so somewhere in my twisted 19-year-old brain, I thought the way to make this big impact on the world was by becoming a rapper. And not that that's the worst idea in the world, but it definitely, is a little bit bizarre considering I had no music experience and never done that before. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought it looked a lot easier than it was. And so yeah, it was an interesting journey, man. I had DJ Khaled host my mixtape, and I had some interesting mentors that were really big artists, and it was just like a really cool journey. And I pretty much learned everything not to do with my career when it came time for me to start representing artists. Like I knew everything not to do because I had made every mistake and spent all the money that I had made in my teenage years. I spent it trying to make it as a rapper, and being flashy and being this and being that and having to pay this person or that person. And so by the time that I started working with Corella, it was like, we didn't spend any money. We just were creative on the internet.
Do you have any of your songs that are available, like for listening the public sphere at all?
You'd have to go dig really deep, and I'm not gonna give you any hints as to where. No, I was terrible, bro. I was the worst rapper of all time. I was a horrible rapper. Like, it's funny, and that's how I started to represent artists. Was they were like, "How are you have all these Facebook fans? How do you have all these this social following when you are terrible? This makes no sense. Like, we're better than you. Can you help us do what you're doing? Because whatever you're doing with the social stuff is working, but you are god awful." And so I was like, yeah, can you make my music better? So it was this kind of very, even Corella, they were writing and producing some of my music at that time, and I was helping them with social media, and that's kind of how we started to work together. So yeah.
That's cool. So you're grinding through your own rapping, you're learning the business, and then you sort of transitioned into becoming a manager. How did that happen? Did that just happen naturally, or were you, strategically trying to position yourself to that sort of role?
No, definitely not, bro. I thought that being a manager was the worst job in the world, and in some ways it is. But I thought it was the worst job in the world because I was like, I love myself as a recording artist. I'm never going to find somebody I believe in more than I believe in myself. And then I found Corella, and they were the first act I did believe in more than I believed in myself. And so I just saw this opportunity. It was like I saw the opportunity, and I guess the world just it was almost like an opening in the matrix. I just was like, wow, dance music was this man's island, and there was no women on it. And it wasn't just the fact that they were women, they were just so talented, and it's so much personality. I'm sure some people listening have been to Soho House before. And I remember we went into Soho House for a meeting with record label executives after we started to buzz on the internet. And I remember the girls we had stickers that said "dopest dope you've ever smoked," and they were putting them on the elevator in Soho House. We just had energy, and we were just crazy. And I wasn't as crazy, but I dressed crazy. We just had a vibe, and it felt like there was really always something happening with us. So once I started working with them and realized the chemistry and how it felt like I was entering this missing piece of the puzzle, and everything started to click, I realized that I had a gift for doing it for other artists. And so once I knew how exciting it could be, I guess my dream was always to make the biggest impact I could and to create together with the most talented people in the world and do so in a way that could inspire other people to accomplish their dreams too. Once I realized that I could do that as a manager, and I didn't have to just have one career with my own career, I could do it with multiple artists. I just started to get really interested in that path. And so, yeah, it felt really natural as it happened, but I never aspired for it to happen in a million years.
Yeah, amazing story, man. What a journey. And then, so after you discovered Cruella, what was the next step? I guess the question is how did you get onto Third Brain? And I think, some of the biggest names like Zoo.
Yeah. So we started Third Brain, and then we signed a couple different artists, and they were okay. But Corella was the main focus. And then Corella kind of went through this span where they were making music post their tour. And I had heard Zoo. And I guess there was this feeling when I first heard Corella where I was like, what genre is that? I don't know what genre that is. And people said, oh, this is dubstep. And I was like, what? I hate dubstep. But I like this. And I thought, oh, maybe there's a lot of other people that'll like that. And when I heard Zoo, kind of the same thing happened. It was like, what genre is this? And then somebody was like, deep house. And I was like, oh, wow. I don't really like deep house that much. At the time, I didn't really like deep house that much. I guess I just didn't really know about it. And Zoo, like, it sounded like, oh, this is really interesting. So with Zoo, that first project, I know you're from, Australia, and it really blew up over there. It was like our goal was to make music that could work in the club, the bedroom, and the car. And there was very little dance music that could work in all three of those settings. And yeah, we just, I mean, at the time, like when you say, how did I get him? Like there was no get him. Like, he had released 52 songs the year before I worked with him, and like nothing had happened. But I really felt like when I met him, like he was like a modern day Pharrell or something like that. And so we kind of built this vision together that was so bold around anonymity, coincidentally, because when you think about NFTs right now, everyone's anonymous or pseudonymous, so many people at least. And Zoo was like kind of, really one of the biggest, if not the biggest anonymous artist. Like it was kind of crazy. And there was a lot of reasons for it and why it worked, but it was a, just an equally as crazy journey. And right, like we went from not releasing a song to being Grammy nominated in 9 months.
Crazy.
So it was like it just felt explosive and so much. It was such a cool project because like he didn't have a Facebook page. Like no one knew who he was. No one even knew his name for a while. Like people were following his music. His SoundCloud name was like user 5681019. And like people were just following. So it was a really cool. We started off that project. Outkast was headlining all the festivals that year. And so we started the project off by making this like deep house version of I Like the Way You Move, So Fresh and So Clean, Around the World, and Miss Jackson. And Moves Like Jagger had been really big at the time. So we called it Moves Like Miss Jackson. And we put it out as unknown artist. And it just top Type Machine, was on MTV. Like everyone was talking about it. Like, who made this? And it just allowed us to kind of build this really interesting cult following where people were always curious what we were going to do next. And really helped me refine my storytelling skills of how to build a brand and tell a good story. And was just an incredible journey.
Crazy. And I guess maybe if you can just share a little bit about who Zoo actually is, because not sure if our listeners are into the space as well.
Zoo is an electronic dance music DJ and a recording artist and a producer who, now he plays major festivals. He headlines Red Rocks in Colorado, and he sells about probably in big markets anywhere from like 5 to 10,000 tickets a city. So yeah, he really interesting, creative person. And I think it was unique at the time for so many reasons. I think the music was unique, but also he was Asian. And there really wasn't like back then, it just didn't, Asian culture was not as popular as it is now. And so I like working with underdogs for sure. And it felt like we were underdogs. And so we kind of built a brand that we thought could compete with the way that America was set up, I guess. Yeah, and the rest of the world too.
No, that's super cool.
I remember, because you're from Australia. I remember the day the EP came out. We were independent. We had no record label, and it went number one over Ariana Grande's album. It was number one on iTunes. And I remember I was screaming and yelling. I was going crazy. I mean, it felt really cool to be in America doing that in Australia without a record label. It just was such a amazing feeling.
Just reminiscing a little bit. I mean, when his tracks came out, I think I was still clubbing back in the day, right? So I don't club anymore, but but it gave me goosebumps. That I think the track Faded came on, and everyone just went nuts, right? That was a really cool song. So then you founded Zoo. That was through Third Brain? What is Third Brain, and I guess what was the genesis of setting that up?
Third Brain started as a management company to manage Corella, right? And then we started managing other artists, and then we kept signing our artists to Sony or Universal, and I was so disappointed in the way that they would invest. It was like we'd be paying them, $1 million in fees from like touring, and then ask for $10,000 to shoot a music video, and they would give a shit about it. And so I was getting really frustrated and thought, I never wanted to be a record label, same way I never wanted to be a manager, but I felt like we could do certain parts of it better. And so we started a record label and a publishing company. And then I was pretty early to streaming with my artists, luckily. And it seemed like labels didn't really understand streaming. And so I got flown out to speak at Spotify's 10th anniversary. And I guess that was the moment where I realized, wait a second, we've been doing everything we've been doing through these tech platforms, social media, but to be at their 10th anniversary and see the energy and realize, wait a second, these are the real rock stars. Like tech was so much cooler than the artist. Like it just wasn't even close. It was so much more interesting. And so at that point, I knew that I wanted to be in tech. And that year, I started writing blog. I wrote a daily blog. So that year, I wrote 362 posts in 365 days. Most of the posts didn't do anything. Occasionally, they'd be quoted in Billboard or something like that, but most of them didn't do anything. And one of the posts was about how the future biggest artists in the world will be those that control their own data, which is interesting because that's still something in crypto like that doesn't even get talked about that much, right? Is like this idea of owning your own data. We think about owning your keys or owning your currency, but we don't think about owning, your data. And I didn't really know how to do it, right? Because all these social media platforms had bottlenecked the artists and their ability to grow. I mean, it was insane. You'd have 50 million followers on YouTube and your videos would be getting 1 million views. And there was no way to reach those 50 million people. So I thought about building another social media platform, but knew that was a very crowded space. And so I wound up writing this post about how having a phone number and being able to communicate with your fans via phone number was the most important thing, because the phone number was the one true atomic unit of identity. It never changed. It was the only way to get instant distribution to a fan. Because if I post something on Instagram, you may not see it, but also you're not going to see it right away. Whereas with a text message, you see it right away. And so I wound up there was a founder that reached out to me, and I wound up partnering with him and working with him to help launch his company. And that company became community.com, where coincidentally Guy Osiri, who now, works with the Apes, et cetera, became a co-founder in that company. And so for years, we worked to basically launch phone numbers for celebrities and brands so that they could control and own their data. So we became community.com, and we never owned the data ourselves. It was always owned by the talent, but we launched phone numbers for Obama, J-Lo, Diddy, White Claw, Weight Watchers, People Magazine, et cetera. We raised $90 million. I mean, it was a really cool journey. It was like we went from 5 to 150 people during the pandemic. And I realized around that time that crypto was going to solve a lot of the problems that we were actually trying to achieve long term. I became really fascinated with decentralized social media and felt like I wasn't, I was good at like a small company, but I wasn't really meant for like corporate company as much. So I started to get the bug and the itch to go out and do this, do my own thing. And that was the birth of Metalink.
Awesome. Just before we get into Metalink, can you just share with everybody with Guy Asiri, because I think he's a pretty big name in the space that we're in, but it might be worthwhile just to shine a little bit of light on Guy.
Guy is the most talented executive I've ever seen. And I'm friends with a lot of people that are at his level, but he operates at a different level. So it's like his instincts are unbelievable, right? It's like he's been managing Madonna since he's 27 years old. He manages Red Hot Chili Peppers and YouTube, but it's not just like that he manages these artists. It's that the amount of people that just call him on the phone for advice, the amount of people that he advises, the tech entrepreneurs, the household names that come to him, and his ability to think creatively and differently about structures and growing businesses. It's not just celebrity. I think when he started working with Apes, everyone thought, oh, you're just going to put celebrities with them and do TV shows and movies. And, he was like, no, token. Like he kind of just had that instinct for like what was going to be valuable to the community. And I think he always has had that. Like his advice is just the best advice that I ever get. And to have had the opportunity at community where we worked together pretty much like, talked almost every day for 2 years was like the most incredible experience I could look for. Because for me in music, I had so much success where I had a lot of mentors. And these people, these were people where you go to dinner with them maybe like 2-3 times a year, but you weren't working with them every day. And with Guy, working with him every day, he was so unafraid of giving honest feedback. He would say things that would like chill me to my bones about how I was showing up or what I needed to do to actually achieve. And I think a lot of people back down from that. But for me, I knew it was coming from a good place, and I knew that he knew what it took to actually be successful. And so I think that the thing that united us, because at the beginning, I didn't really understand how valuable he was going to be. It was kind of the most idiotic thing I could do. Like I just didn't get it. And I think the thing that united us was that we were both just working so hard to make this happen. And it felt like we were in it together, and he's brilliant. So it's like his ability to make things, it's no wonder that, him joining Yuga has helped protect and grow that IP and turn Yuga into one of, if not the only super big company in the space that's, been able to maintain and grow and progress. So he's just amazing. He's just brilliant. And this is a guy too. I mentioned all celebrities, like he's also invested in Uber and Airbnb and Spotify and Peloton. Like he's done the thing, it's like, it's not like he started his own companies, and he's just really understands how to build business.
True or false? Was Guy Azeri behind the IP right sale from CryptoPunks Lava Labs to Yuga?
True. I don't know to the extent. I know that he had a vision for that, and I believe that was, I believe that he helped, seed that idea and then close the deal and make it happen. I don't know to the extent that it was happening, but I think the idea behind that, and he's never told me this directly, so I don't want to get it confused. But I think the idea behind that was that the punks weren't really doing much in the space, and there was probably concern that if they remember, there was that moment in time where, like with every project, where there was like holder FUD and people were like, they had messed something up. I don't remember what it was. The punks owners had messed something up and people were upset about some event or something, and they weren't doing anything at NFT New York or something. And I think that Yuga was looking at how big they were getting in the space, and in order to protect the space, that project needed somebody. Owners wanted to usher in that IP into a new era, potentially. I'm not saying they needed it, but it would be helpful, right? If the owners understood the space, and by purchasing them, I think it's a hedge for Yuga that effectively they will always own the most timeless PFP IP that could ever exist. Because as amazing as apes are, they will always be second to punks. And so I think that there's something so classic about punks personally that I feel. And so it's just such a brilliant acquisition on all fronts. Like I said, I don't know the full logistics, but I'm sure that that guy played a huge role in that.
Yeah, for sure. I sort of sensed that as well. Super interesting, man. And okay, so you went from, rapper, creating your own label, to community.com. What was the transition from that into, crypto? And what was that red pilling journey for you before we sort of get into Metalink?
Yeah, so I was fascinated by Bitcoin, but what really happened is there was this decentralized social media platform that launched that people in our space hate. So I won't even say the name of it. And what happened is there was this sort of essence about it that as influencers joined that platform the token would become very big. And it was set up on a bonding curve, which effectively meant, similar to any crypto. I mean, most crypto is not a bonding curve, but similar to any crypto, right? The more people that get in, the more the value of the token goes up. And so what happened was the white paper alluded to all these celebrities joining the platform. And I started to get phone calls from a variety of different people. And they were very sketchy phone calls. It was like, hey, there's this new thing launching. Do you know about it? I can't talk about it. I signed an NDA. I heard that Chamath and Naval and Guy Oseary and the Winklevoss twins and Coinbase and Andreessen and Sequoia and everyone's invested in it. And it was like, I guess, a time where you didn't usually hear like Naval's name next to Coinbase. Like it just was it sounded like a dream team of investors. And so I wound up becoming infatuated by that platform. And what was interesting about that platform was, it was kind of like a Twitter, but it was just decentralized. And what was happening was everybody was so excited about it, but the majority of the traffic and actually activity on the platform was taking place on Telegram and Discord. And the way that the platform was set up was that the platform itself, like the website, was never meant to be the project. The project was the protocol, and they were looking for other people to build on top of their token, on top of their protocol and their technology. And so I knew they weren't going to build a chat app. So I went out and started to raise money to build a chat app on top of that platform. And the idea was that effectively we would be building a platform where you could execute on the information you were talking about. So you didn't have to like be on Telegram and then go over to Coinbase. We'd find some way over time to merge those two. And I looked at Discord and I said, okay, this is a $16 billion business, but they don't do any transactions. What will this look like if you could effectively do the transaction in the same place? So we started to build. And then very quickly, I realized that that platform was in that protocol. They weren't going to work, at least in the short term, at all. And so instead of being a maxi of this like random niche, blockchain, I started to look toward Ethereum. And our investors were dead split because people knew Ethereum was where everything was at, but I had no experience in Ethereum. So people questioned whether or not, I could effectively create change and get market adoption on Ethereum. And I came up with this one idea for a private chat app for CryptoPunk owners. And I used to work with Blau. So I remember calling Blau and I was like, yo, Blau, what do you think of this? And he was like, yeah, I don't think so. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. I thought maybe it was a bad idea. And then like a few weeks later, I was with Ivan Soderwright. And not that Justin was wrong. Justin Blau is a fucking genius for everyone. I think everyone knows he's a genius. I was with Ivan Soderwright, the founder of MoonPay, at dinner. And he was in London. And he was talking about how he bought a punk the night before and how challenging it was to get a hold of punks. And in that moment, he and I kind of looked at each other and he was like, what if you made a private chat app for CryptoPunk owners? And I was like, I thought of that and chose not. Oh, yes. Because now I needed to pivot, right? And so punks were just going crazy. That was like, it's always funny how fake news drives these movements. I swear the moment for punks when things started to go ballistic is when there was that fake article about one selling for 90 million when really it just got listed for 90 million. Like the alien. Like these fake news moments are just hilarious. But that was the moment I started to see punks everywhere. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And most of our investors thought that nobody would join, right? Like who would connect their wallet to a platform that they've never heard of with a $300,000 asset? And most people thought they wouldn't do it. And I thought I had enough trust that I just bought my punk and I was like verified and I had a reputation. So I thought maybe I'd be able to get people to join. So I expected maybe 50 people to join, then we would kind of take it from there. And we launched it in the first 48 hours, over 20% of punks joined and started chatting. And I was like, this is crazy. And so that was sort of the moment. We had plenty of issues that we could talk about, but that was sort of the moment where I was like, whoa, this is really fucking happening. It was such an incredible moment because I felt like punks before that, it was like Discord wasn't token gated at that point for them. And so it was really like a cool moment of just networking with the punk community. And so many of these people were OGs in the space that I looked up to and to get their support. People like G Money, where it was like he was tweeting. He didn't even invest at that point. He invested now, but he hadn't even invested. And he started tweeting about it and supporting us. And that's when I just knew it was like, we were onto something. This is cool. We need to keep building for this space.
Nice. I don't know if you remember this at all, because I'm sure you're probably trying to onboard different punks, but because you had an orange knitted cap, I think we had like a separate private orange knitted cap Discord chat.
I remember that. Oh, yeah.
And you came on and said, guys, join Metalink. And we're like, oh, hang on, guys, this is a bit of a scam. And we had to sort of triangulate before we all jumped on, like in the early days. But that was kind of funny. I do remember that.
Well, I mean, as smartly as you should, right? Like, I think that, most things that, when someone says, hey, like, come join something in the world of Web3, we need to be more conscious and discerning than anything in Web2. It's kind of amazing how when you see on like on a mobile app, you see log in with Google or log in with Facebook, you don't flinch. You're so comfortable logging in with those platforms and you never feel like you're going to get scammed. But in Web3, we're just not there yet. And so, I don't blame you guys. And I'm glad you guys wound up coming over and joining. It was fun to have you. So, but yeah, it's, I totally respect what, how people treat their security and their wallets, obviously it's not even it's the most important thing, right? In Web3, because we spend so much time building these amazing collections and one wrong move and we could lose everything we built. So I think people are getting a lot smarter about that, which makes me happy.
Yeah. Mate, and so just going back to that as well. So who actually invested in Metalink? Because I think I saw that CoinDesk article a while back as well. Was Gary V on that cap table as well? And
yeah, we had a lot of really cool investors. So on the fund side, it was Social Capital, Arrington Capital, Mike Arrington, the founder of TechCrunch, Anthos Capital, who's Emily White, the former COO of Snapchat, SV Angel, who invests in all the best companies in the world. That's just amazing to me how they operate and how they work. It's Raised in Space, which is Scooter Braun's fund. Obviously, Sound Ventures, Guy's fund with Ashton. And then we have a bunch of corporate investors, Gemini Frontier Fund and Humans Ventures, the team behind Genies, and Baller VC, which did Dapper Labs. And then you got the angels. So you got Gary and Guy and Blau and G Money and Cosimo and Farouk and Seed Phrase and Meltum and Santiago Royal Santos. So you got a bunch of punks in there, right? And Troy Carter and Mo Shalizi and Miles Shear and so many different cool, Nick Adler, so many different cool people, and Cosimo Medici, so many cool people in the space that, have given us a chance and got behind us. I couldn't believe it, right? When it was happening, it was like, wow, this is, because I'd seen it with the previous platform and I'd seen it with Community, because the Community raised $90 million, right? So I'd seen this sort of trajectory. It's not that I never thought it would happen to me. I knew it could happen to me, and I know what I'm capable of. But it was, that was just a time where like people were, social capital's in. Like I gotta check that deal out. So I think that was kind of, it was such a unique moment in time where people were very interested in deals that became hot and became oversubscribed so quickly. I mean, we raised $6 million. We had $20+ million of people that wanted to put in money.
Mate, what's the other platform you didn't want to name? I was sort of guessing it was that Twitter clone that everybody's creating. I forgot what that was called. Like, is that even around anymore, or what is that?
It's still around. I go back there like once a year just to be like, what's up with this thing? It was called BitClout.
That's right.
It's funny. Like everyone has their intro to crypto, right? Like I didn't know what Ethereum maxis were saying about BitClout. I just became red pilled on Bitcoin. Like you become red pilled on all sorts of shit when you're entering the space. And you could say that I had a job to like be more discerning. But the interesting thing is I really believe in the underlying concept of free data ownership to the public. So, for example, the thesis behind the project was so strong. It was just so poorly executed. The thesis that I found so interesting, and I guess this is the best way I could explain it to you. Imagine that you were a kid in college and you were going to get a job and your roommate says to you, hey, my neighbor just started this thing called Facebook. He says we can go meet with him. Let's go meet with him. And you're like, okay, cool. I saw MySpace getting kind of big. Like maybe I'll go check out this Facebook thing. So you go to meet with Mark Zuckerberg. You sit down and you say, okay, Mark, we're graduating school. We want a job. Can we get a job with you? And he says, instead of getting a job, why don't you take all our data and just go build whatever you want to build? Shopping apps, dating apps, gaming apps, whatever you want to build. And it's up to you to build the product, garner market adoption, and charge a fair price. And if you do, you owe me nothing. Zero. I'm not taking a cut of anything you do. And if you fail, you fail, right? This will be your entrepreneurial journey. And maybe we'll even give you some like little fund, little startup fund or whatever, just from our foundation or whatever. And our data is going to power your platform. And that data is all going to be on chain. So what's interesting about this is actually kind of what Facebook did. I mean, obviously they hired a bunch of people, but the difference is that they shut down the API whenever the fuck they felt like it. So like Tinder was using it to basically find people that you kind of knew. And then one day Facebook was like, no, we got all the data from your apps. Now we're just going to do it ourselves. And all these social apps have done that same thing. They all have made their APIs public and then they choose to shut them down whenever they want. And the problem with this is it stifles innovation. Because if you effectively knew, Maxwell, that every time you join a new social media platform, your followers were going to go with you every single time. You would try any social media platform you heard had any buzz at all, you'd be totally cool with doing. Now, the followers would need to effectively be there on that platform as well, otherwise they wouldn't see your content. But it was so interesting, like when artists were moving from Instagram to TikTok, and every 5 years there's some other TikTok type thing. It's like they have to start over every single time. And who loses? They lose. The artists lose. The people that built voices on these platforms lose because these platforms own their followers. It's so fucked. And so I thought that vision of your followers being on chain, of having one blockchain that effectively controls that process, but is open to everybody and everybody can use it. And I could go build a chat app on top of it. Someone else could build a dating app. Someone else could build another social app. And effectively, content that was created on that platform could live on multiple websites or created on that blockchain could live on multiple platforms at the same time. And you could effectively build your own algorithm and say, I only want to see sports content, or I only want to see this type of content. That was just such a brilliant concept, so far ahead of its time. But it was just so poorly executed that it didn't build credibility with the crypto space, unfortunately. And maybe the mechanics just weren't right on the token. I mean, there's all sorts of issues with that project. But the underlying thesis to this day, while people could argue with how it was rolled out or whether people's name and likenesses were used or whether it was just cheesy, okay, all that I can give you. But the actual philosophy and vision for the project is very important to the future of the world that we're going to be living in.
Absolutely. But the thing is we all keep going back to Twitter. We all keep going back to these centralized sort of platforms. Do you sort of see any promising products that are coming out? Because I know of a few.
No, no, I don't. And here's why. And it took 4 months into the journey with that project to understand why we don't see a lot of innovation. Creators, you would think that they care about owning their data and about monetizing as their like two primary functions for their business. But as Chris Rock pointed out in his special, we actually care about attention. We are addicted to attention more than anything else. And so the network effects of these platforms are so strong that people care more about how many likes they get on Instagram than they do how much money they make. They may not tell you that, but I've sat down with hundreds of tier 1, tier 2 talent. And when you actually see, and I worked with them, right? And when you see their behavior when they're launching their phone number, this is finally going to be data they own, and you see how much pride they take in it, or really how little pride, right? They typically just wind up caring about, to your point, we keep going back. These platforms just have us in a total chokehold. And the reason why the innovation hasn't happened is because the only thing they care about other than attention is, once again, not making money, not owning their own data. They care about making it easier to create content. The reason Instagram got big is because they had better filters. The reason TikTok got big is that they had better video editing tools. These crypto social platforms, they reinvent the wheel with the way that blockchain is used or the way that money is exchanged and value is exchanged. But then, to your point, when you brought up the project in the first place, it was a Twitter clone. And the creators themselves that have millions of followers, they don't need another place they can post YouTube videos. They already have YouTube. They don't need, like, TikTok wasn't like post your YouTube video. They're like, make a new kind of video. And so I think there's been little innovation in terms of new types of content or making it easier to create content for the creators. And so we haven't seen a project that matches that new type of viral content mixed with crypto yet. And that's really, I think, been the reason why this specific vertical in crypto has been quite hamstrung.
That's super interesting insights you have there, man. Like, I never really thought of it like that, but I think you're right. I mean, it's a bit of a dopamine hit, an engagement farming that everybody sort of gets, and it's hard to get that if you're on a new platform that's not really active, right? So, probably right.
Yeah, I mean, the 18 to 22-year-olds that are creating this stuff, they just want to find easier, better ways to create content. That's it. If you could show them that, they're more excited than making an extra $1,000 a post.
And so, going back to Metalink, then, like, I mean, how are you tying all this stuff up with Metalink, and where do you sort of see it going next? Maybe just describe what Metalink actually is for those that are listening.
Yeah, so Metalink right now is a platform, it's a mobile app, allows you to track and connect around your NFTs. Allows you to track your portfolio, get real-time push notifications. It aggregates all of your Discord announcements for you. And it has a bunch of token-gated chat rooms for all the NFTs that you hold. So we launched a chat room for every single NFT collection on Ethereum. And so that's what it is today. But our goal long-term, the vision is, how do we become a place where you could talk, track, and transact all on the same platform, which I don't think anyone's quite figured out how to do yet. OpenSea, you can like transact and maybe track a little bit. Same with Blur, but you don't really talk on there. And then Discord, you talk, or Telegram, but you don't really transact. You don't track. So maybe track a little. So I think there's an opportunity when you can do all three in the same place. There's a lot of synergy that happens, and maybe over time we can take some of that market share away from some of those bigger platforms. But to be honest, I think we have a big uphill road ahead of us. Like, the space in a bear market is extremely difficult to build in and get market adoption. And so it's also quite small, right? And so we have a real uphill road ahead of us over the next year as we try to figure out what we can build for you, people listening, right? You're probably in the NFT space. Like, we built the product we built now because we thought, regardless of whether you're active trader that's on OpenSea or Blur refreshing floor prices thousands of times a day, or you're a casual collector, right, that maybe doesn't know what your portfolio is worth at any given time because you don't have time to check it. We just said, look, we're going to make this really easy. We're going to give you a snapshot of it. If anything changes, we'll just let you know. We'll send you a push notification. And so I think that this is valuable to some people in the space, and figuring out how we find the people that is valuable to, and then continue to provide more value by rolling out new features, incorporating the coins into their profile view so they can see their ape and their Ethereum coin, as it's going up or down with their NFTs, to become one of the first platforms that really is both of those things. So yeah, that's kind of what we're building today.
No, it's super cool, man, and love sort of seeing this stuff because it's really hard to keep on top of all the movements and discords and all the communities that I'm in, for sure.
Yeah, so when I know you were about to download it. So when you download it, you're going to have all your Discord announcements in one spot, which is going to be, I hope really nice for you. Yeah, we track over 5,000 collections right now.
Like the other side too is Discord announcements is one thing. So there's a lot of noise that's there, but sometimes in Discord you get action items that I miss out on, right? So like whitelist opportunities or collabs and stuff like that. And those are the ones that I really want to get on top of. Like, would there be a way to decipher between just general updates and then actual action items?
It's such a great point. Like, I think aggregation of Discord announcements is the first step to making sure that you can see a full landscape. But the goal, I think there's many companies working on it. We're actually not working on it right now. Well, our plan is that a lot of other companies are working on it, and they're planning to make their APIs open. And once they do, we just hope to create the best consumer experience of what that actually looks like. So, it'll be the claims or the mints or this is coming, that's coming. And you could just see it in one or two lines as opposed to these 5 paragraph messages, right? That projects sometimes send that get lost in other, irrelevant, to your point, announcements. So yeah, we need to make it as simple as possible. And we're definitely working toward that.
Yeah. Mate, and I think there's a lot of tracking, apps out there that sort of track your portfolios, etc., or your NFT portfolios. Like, sort of makes yours different.
That's a great question. So I think there's like 5 key things. We track all marketplaces. We have trait floors, which most of those apps don't have. And our push notifications being real time is huge. The other couple apps I subscribe to, their push notifications are like 24 to 48 hours delayed. If you're a trader, you don't want to know about something 24 to 48 hours later. You want to know about it right then and there. And then fourthly, the ability to see your portfolio, not just denominated in Ethereum, but also in USD. Like last week, my portfolio looked like it was like down, 4 or 5% in Ethereum, but it was up like 20%, like 70 grand in USD. And so it was so nice to be able to see that in both those different currencies. And we'll add more currencies over time if people like that feature. And the last one is a lot of the tracking apps aren't tracking the announcements, right? They're not aggregating your announcements for you. I think those are the early key things. But if people have other ideas and things they want us to build, feel free to hit me on Twitter. I'm always in the DMs and looking to collaborate and hear people out on what we should build next for the community. Because at the end of the day, we're building it for you.
Awesome. And I guess what's next for Metalink then?
So we have another product coming out here in the next couple of months called Metaswap. It's a peer-to-peer trading platform that leverages our chat technology. So there's not that many trades that happen a day right now, like actual trades, like not buying and selling, but like trading. And I think one of the reasons is it's scary, right? Like you talk to somebody on Twitter and then you send them a link and then you go over here. It's like, ooh, I don't know. I don't want to click any links, right? So with Metaswap, effectively, you'll be able to go on the platform and know that you're talking to the person that has that wallet and you're trading with them on there. So it kind of looks like RuneScape, where it's like, like you enter in the assets, into like your column and then you propose it and then you do it all on chain. And so it's this kind of just free peer-to-peer trading platform. And that sort of is the first transact product that we'll have put out. So we got the talk and track product out, but this will be the first transact product we've put out.
Well, looking forward to it, mate. I'll have to definitely download it because I've only been using it on the web. Definitely play around with it a little bit more. But I am glad that you got it on dark mode now as well, mate. I think when I first started, I was on light mode. So good thing.
Yes. Yes. I haven't even seen what light mode looks like. I am just in dark mode. So, I'm all about it. I'm all about it. Yeah.
Mate, let's talk a little bit about your CryptoPunk then. And I guess, what was your journey into CryptoPunks like? Like, how did you discover CryptoPunks and what made you ultimately want to buy?
Oh my gosh. I'm so proud of it and I'm so embarrassed at the same time. Okay. So I was watching punks and I was like, look, I think that I want to I mean, the punk was my first NFT. So like, I think I want a punk. So I started looking at the punks, maybe, I think they were about like maybe 150 grand at the time. And I started to look at them and then, went up to 200 and 220 or whatever. And then I was in Europe and Visa announced that they had bought the CryptoPunk and they announced it like first thing in the morning. And so in Europe, it was like maybe like 1 o'clock, but it was like 4 a.m., 5 a.m., like New York time or whatever. I don't know why it was announced so early. So I figured by the time like it got news in America, because it was already going crazy on Twitter, I thought punks were going to go up. And so I went home and I bought my forever punk for a lot of money. So yeah, and then it was cool. They continued to go up for a long time, and obviously they've come back down a lot. But to me, punks is like, it's just so classic. Like, I don't know what happens with PFPs in general. Like, I hope that they're always part of the collector's zeitgeist and that this is a moment in history. And so many of my friends' projects become, part of that historical journey to what NFTs can and should be, as sort of these historical artifacts. I don't know that many of them will be looked at like that, but I'd love that for that to happen. But punks, like, you think about like how many kids were in your high school?
A couple hundred, 400, maybe 500.
Okay, so mine had 2,000. So, okay, I guess you could say imagine that would be like 25 of your high schools. That's it that could ever have a punk. Think about how many high schools are in the world. And for me, let's say it was 5 high schools, but I think like 3,000 punks are just gone forever. Like, they were minted for free. They've never traded. Like, I think there's probably only a 7,000 circulation of punks. So then it's like, okay, now it's only like 18 high schools or whatever, or for me, like 3.5 high schools. So I think that there's always going to be people where, PFPs have been thought of as a flex for a long time in a digital identity. And as markets fluctuate, which is what we're seeing happen right now, and punks kind of regain their position as the leaders, I don't see another project that's going to be able to hold weight next to punks long term with a guarantee. I'm not saying apes won't do it. I'm not saying apes won't surpass it. It's possible. I love apes too, but punks is the OG realist PFP that there can ever be. I think that's that big, right? There's things like blockheads and whatever that happened before on Bitcoin or whatever. There's like different stuff like that. But as far as like PFP, I mean, those guys, that was like, that's the OG shit.
From your perspective, why do you find that important? Like, why do you feel like that is such a important fact for you?
Well, I feel like digital identity is really important and belonging to something is really important. And why do people join country clubs? Why do people why do people buy Bugattis, and part of it's just like belonging. And I think that the network of punks over time is going to become like, it's already an incredible group of people, but as more and more people get priced out, less people are able to hold or less people want to hold. I think there's always going to be a lot of, hodlers or holders, whatever you want to call it. I think there's always going to be a lot of diamond hands in the punk community, but there will always be ones for sale too, and people flipping and whatnot. I think that over time, these things start to become like we were here first, and I think that that's important because if Web3 and NFTs effectively and crypto effectively, if any one of those three, I know they're not all separate. They in many ways they're one and the same, but in some ways they're different. Like, even if NFTs don't become mainstream, which I think they will, but like punks will always be part of the crypto like story. It's like they just have that lore around them. And I think part of it is that they haven't tried to do a bunch of other shit, and that's kind of what makes them cool. So I just think Larva Labs' attention to detail and creativity, like even when I look at Meebits, like it's just so cool. What they accomplished is pretty spectacular. And the fact that these were minted, claimed, they used to be called claims. The fact that they were claimable for free it's even more of a play to the authenticity of the project and makes it really special. Yeah, I think punks are really special.
Absolutely. And I think it's part of the reason why you and I are talking today, right? I think I connected with so many other different people around the world. But mate, just go back to your specific punk though. Black beard, earring, knitted cap.
Yeah,
How were you thinking through the traits back then? I mean, looking through this, you got it in August 21, right? 2021.
yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your thinking and thought process selecting punks?
I got a beard, and I didn't think the bald ones look very good. I'm bald, and I didn't think the bald ones look very good. So uh, I thought, like, man, this guy's got swag. And I think part of being a punk is like you want to, like, I don't have an earring or anything, but like you like punks, like by virtue, it's like a little bit rebellious. And so the idea that like this guy looks super clean, he's got the earring, he's got the hat, he's got my beard. I was like, this is who I want to be in the digital world. And it definitely kind of looks like me. So I love that part of it for sure.
I'd love it. It is super clean, and obviously, I'm a huge fan of the knitted cap.
I also think there was a part of it where Gary Vee had just bought his, right? And Gary V's his ape punk had the, let's see, yeah, his had the fitted cap. And so I was like, oh man, that to me was like a sign too that I know we both got knitted caps. We're like, this is it just seemed like an important trait in the collection. I'm not sure that it really is or not. I think it is, but of course I'm biased.
I think it is too. I mean, G Money's got it in there, and I think even AJ, Gary's younger brother, has also got one as well, another knit cap.
It's funny though, if I look at right now on the floor of punks, two of the five lowest ones on the floor have knitted caps, which is crazy for how many like they're actually really good looking punks. I'm surprised these are like on the floor, these two.
It's probably those farmers out there at the moment trying to flip flip some punks.
Yeah, right.
And I noticed that you bought it off Kalish. Did you negotiate at all, or did you just buy what was available?
No, I didn't. It's funny because I'm in some group chats with Kalish now, and it's funny I didn't even know that was his. I had no idea who I was buying it from, so I didn't negotiate at all, man. That time period, it was like you don't jump on. I mean, I was like on the beach with my family. Man, it was a crazy trip because I was fundraising, and I was like not spending any time with my family, like at all. Like I was completely on American working hours, and almost to the point like I wound up getting divorced last June. I mean, part of it I was just working so hard, and so I decided I was going to go to like the beach for like an hour with my family. And I get there, the visa thing happens, and I'm like, nope, I'm going home. I'm not missing out on getting a punk. I'm going to get a punk right now. So yeah, I went home and got the punk. So I wasn't in negotiation mode at all. These things were getting snatched up like they were candy. Like it felt like they were selling, every 15 minutes or so. It was crazy. So I did not want to miss out on my forever punk. Once I set in that was the one, I was like, I need to get this immediately. Yeah.
Well, it's a good choice, man, and a beautiful punk. And I do remember that time. That was super crazy and euphoric. I think just hanging out the punk Discord and seeing those punk bots pop off every so seconds, like floors were getting swept, and I think it rose to about a 148th floor, which is like close to $500,000 at the time.
Insane.
That was an insane period.
Insane. Yeah, there was only one that I wanted more. I'm trying to find it, but it was like with I think it was with the straight cap forward, but it was like the same style punk, and somebody bought it, and I was trying to like trade him for a while, but then now it's like this is my guy.
If money wasn't an issue, like what would be your dream punk?
Oh, if money was not an issue, I would have bought the punk that Seed Phrase sold last year. I think he sold, what was this? It's this.
The hoodie ape?
Yeah, the hoodie ape is pretty fucking dope.
Man,
That's
that
pretty
was
fucking
dope.
dope, man. I don't know that can be beat. That is just like epic, epic, epic punk.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much up there for me as well. I think.
Yeah, is there anyone that does more for you than that one?
Yeah, I think that's probably the grail. I mean, I don't really like the aesthetic of the aliens. I know they're worth the most. I'll probably prefer an ape or a zombie over an alien, if I'm honest, aesthetically. But I think it's just something about the combination of a hoodie
Yeah,
and an ape
yeah,
just
for
does it
sure.
for me too. But having said that, though, and I did say this in another punkcast, is that I think even if I bought a different punk, I think I've just vibed with my punk so much, it'd be hard for me to change my profile picture. So it just wouldn't feel like it's me, right? So even though it is cool, it just wouldn't be me.
Yeah. Yeah, the ape with the top hat and the glasses is pretty dope too. Yeah, I agree. The apes and the zombies are cooler aesthetically than the aliens for sure.
Yeah. And Jake, are you collecting or having your eye on any other collections in this market at the moment?
I've been really focused on building the tech, for Metalink. So I haven't been as focused on trading as much. I have my collection. I got the Punk. I got the Split Face Murakami. I have 7 mutants. Grateful to have minted 20 mutants. Back then. That was my first mint. I was late, man. I was late to this space. So yeah, yeah. No, I'm not. I was looking at D gods because they're coming over to ETH. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how they pop upon coming over to ETH. But no, I think that I bought a lot of things. I made some money, with whitelist and stuff like that. But I also bought a lot of things that are worth a lot less, and I spent a lot of time doing it. And at the end of the day, I realized like I want to build. So yeah, and I'm always like also watching. There's a project on Solana that I own a lot of called the Catalina Whale Mixer, and I think with D gods like leaving and going to ETH, that Catalina Whale Mixer has a chance to really step up and become that project on Solana. And so I'm always kind of paying attention to what they're doing because those guys are really good executives too. They just signed a deal with Def Jam to put out like music through their project and stuff. So I've been kind of watching them. I know their ordinals are about to come out, and but I did think it's funny. I know 12 Fold's getting a lot of hate right now, but I am a big fan of Figgy. That was a project that I was looking at, and I was like, man, like be cool to own. Cool to own those. Oh, I also like the State of the Art project by Thank You X. I actually that is something recently that I collected. I think that's my favorite project of the year, where he basically like created these giant canvases and put and cut them up, and you buy pieces of the canvas. But then if you buy pieces that are adjacent to each other, he cuts that part of the canvas together. So it's kind of like a competition to see who can get like the biggest Thank You X painting. It's pretty cool.
It is cool. And he's another punk as well, right? So, which is always good to see.
I think so. Yeah, he's a brilliant artist. I think he's
Yeah,
so talented.
absolutely. And if you had to look across the punk community, do you have a favorite punk that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think that my two favorites would be Cosmo and Seed Phrase. Yeah, those guys are great. Like they're just great human beings, and I like Punk 65292 because I feel like he's like truly, truly, truly like anonymous, and I like that part of it. I think that like he stands for some cool things. But yeah, man, Seed Phrase is it's these stories are so cool with like or I love Tony Herrera too, like Tony Herrera minting over 100 punks is such a great story, and then losing them for a while and then getting them back. Or I guess he didn't lose them, but he didn't have access to his hard drive. It's such a cool story. But like Seed Phrase, came in and just, came in and is like, look, they were going for what, 20, 30 grand. He's like, I'll buy the nut rarest one for 70 grand or whatever it was. Like, I think they were actually going for less. And he just really picked up the grails. And that was so smart, to have the courage to do that. So I really respect him and the decisions he's made around his collection.
If you had to describe punk culture in a few words, how would you describe that?
Like OG crypto internet rebel builders.
I like it. Rebel builders.
How would you do it? How would you do it?
No, I think those words, I mean, it's always hard, right? I think I look at it from counterculture and, rebellious probably pops up, but always, a little bit more innovative on the forefront. And one word that always comes up on most podcasts is builders. And I keep sort of saying this all the time is most punks are building. They don't have a lot of time to sit there and shit post on Twitter all the time to really try and pump out bags because they're out actually building something meaningful in the space. And so that's what I really respect about punks. But what are your views on V1 punks,
Irrelevant.
BTC punks, or slash ordinals?
Irrelevant.
And how do you feel, or how did you feel about the Yuga acquisition when that happened?
Brilliant, important, historic, and reassuring.
And if you could pass a message on to the next owner of your punk, what would you like to say to them?
Take good care. Never sell it if you don't, unless you have to. Yeah.
So, Jake, that sort of wraps up our interview for today. But man, it was really fun rifting and getting to know you and your super interesting journey and career to date. Looking forward to what you build for Metalink next. And yeah, we'll keep an eye out for, I guess, your next movements. But I think any sort of final closing comments and, how can people find you?
I'm on Twitter. Find me at Jake Udell, Udell. And if you've enjoyed listening to this and you've made it this far, then you obviously like what you've heard. And we'd love for you to check out our mobile app. I think it could provide value to you. So just go to the App Store if you're on iOS, on the iPhone, and just download the Metalink app and let me know what you think. If you have any questions about it, we're here anytime. I'm here anytime. You can reach out to me anytime with anything. My DMs are open.
Awesome. And guys, thank you for listening to another episode of PunkCast, and we'll be back next week with another punk. Bye for now.